What's going on, guys? Billy Pinckney here alongside New York Mets pitcher Jake Reed. Jake, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Good, good. Appreciate you hopping on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, now what a career you've had. Somebody who's been around for a while and really grinded throughout the minor leagues to get to where you are today here with the Mets. But with the Twins, you really paid your dues. Can you tell me about the Twins organization and how they developed you and groomed you to become the pitcher you are today?
Yeah, I had a lot of really good years in Minnesota. Two different front offices. Was drafted by one, and then about halfway through, a new front office came in, and so saw a lot of changes, a lot of new coaches, but a lot of people that I really, really loved, and teammates and coaches that helped me a lot in my career. It was a crazy career. It got going really, really quickly. I was in like Double-A my first full season, and then struggled there for a couple of years. They kind of let me work some stuff out early on in my career in Double-A, which was nice. And then got to Triple-A in like 16, I think, for the first time, 2016. And then 16, 17, 18. Had really good years in AAA with the Twins, like really good years. Didn't get an opportunity. And then in 19 with Minnesota, sort of got to the bottom of that as far as why I wasn't, getting an opportunity to get to the big leagues. And I had a really honest and great conversation with one of my coaches there, Mike McCarthy. The game has changed a lot, as just the things that are valued and the ways in which we, minor league players are sort of evaluated, and what they look at, and especially pitchers. And so I was a guy that always threw really hard, but as analytics kind of found their way into the game more, I wasn't doing anything spectacular on TrackMan or Rapsodo. My breaking ball was really average. So other than velocity, that's really all I had. And so finally had an honest conversation in 19 with one of my coaches there, and just pretty much told me like something I had to do, something change something to get an opportunity with the Twins. And after a long kind of difficult conversation, I think, because I was pitching well. It's hard, like when you're pitching well, to be told that you need to make a change. But I think after that was kind of the time when we decided to drop down sidearm. So did that in about halfway through 2019. And just, for whatever reason, they liked that a lot better than the velocity. The movement improved on all my pitches. My slider got a lot better. And so, yeah, I think that it was definitely some growing pains with the Twins that year, and then didn't get to play in 2020 because of COVID. And then last year being my first full year doing it, it was definitely a transition. But all that being said, I had a really good experience with Minnesota Twins. A lot of like really good friendships of guys that I still keep in touch with, still playing fantasy football with the group of Twins guys. In guys' weddings and that sort of thing. And then just a lot of great coaches that I got to play for as well. The front office was great. When I made my debut with the Dodgers, I had texts from, Rocco and Thad Levine and guys in their front office and stuff just congratulating me. So it was a group of really great guys, from top to bottom. Unfortunately, I didn't get an opportunity with them, which is what you always want, by the team you get drafted by, but awesome experience with them.
That's great. No, a great story. I mean, I was going to mention, too, about your delivery and how that's evolved. Would you say that was in the offseason, that change, or was that something that you discussed during the season?
Yeah, it was during the season. It was we were probably 2 months into the season in 2019. I think it was June, right around June 1st, and had that conversation at BP with my coach and just decided to try it, which was a cool part of it. Was kind of scary, trying something new in the middle of the season, but there was also sort of like a liberty to it where I knew that I was going to have some slack and knew that I was going to be able to because it was in the middle of the season, I was going to get, to work on some things and have the freedom to kind of, I guess, fail a little bit. And so, yeah, it was literally like split the season in half.
Wow. That's surprising that they want to do it mid-season. That's interesting. Yeah. What were the first few outings like? How did they go?
They were really good. I think my first month of doing it wasn't as much of a transition as I thought. I was always like a low 3/4 guy. Um, so it wasn't like I was going from like way over the top to like scraping my knuckles. It was like I was always kind of low 3/4, and it was more of like a posture thing at the beginning. Like I just kind of was like standing up taller. It felt like a big difference, but it wasn't. So I think that helped. And then also, like I said, it was just like I was very relaxed, and it was like comforting to know that like, all right, this is new. We're in the middle of the season right now. So like I'm gonna have some freedom to kind of mess around with some grips, some stuff, and fail a little bit. And I think being in that mindset, I think kind of just relaxed me. And I felt like I was just playing, like playing baseball, like it was like backyard playing wiffle ball, just kind of slinging it in there. And so the first month was really good. But then when I started, doing it more consistently, like you start to think about it a little more. And I ran into some command issues definitely early on in that first year of doing it for sure.
Well, speaking of pitch grips, will you be able to show us the pitch grips that you have, and maybe if any change beforehand and then as you evolve with your new delivery?
Yeah, so I was being a velocity guy, was like a four seam guy, coming up, and threw mostly four seams. We'll throw a two seam every now and then, but primarily four seam. And then my slider, before I didn't spike it, I was two fingers on. That was when I was over the top. And then as soon as I dropped down, the biggest reason dropping down was to create more movement with my fastball. So going from a four seam guy to all sinkers. So when I first dropped down, I was trying a bunch of different things. I started with like a one seam. So like I was like, if that's the two seam, I would kind of turn it in my hand a little bit and then move it forward, almost like a breaking ball. And then just try to kind of like get on top of that and throw that. And I threw it all right. Like I said, I kind of ran into some command issues early on. And so then I went up a little higher on the one seam and just kind of split that seam right there. And then from there, I ended up just going to a two seam, just standard two seam. And what we found just with TrackMan and stuff, and is that I wasn't getting any more sync with the one seam or movement or anything that I wasn't getting with the two seam. And if I could control the two seam, better than the one seam, then I may as well just throw that. So I'm all two seams now. And then I will throw a four seam every now and then. There's still a little velocity left in the tank. So I'll, if I'm trying to get it by somebody or something, I could still throw a four seam. And then my slider, if you're looking at the horseshoe, and this has a lot of it has come from seeing other people do this, so I just come across here, my finger across that seam there, and then I'm spiking it now too. And so I'm pretty much throwing, I feel like I'm throwing a curve ball from this slot, so I'm kind of pulling across as opposed to pulling down. But yeah, that's my slider. That's the money maker right there. And the changeup is I'm here. I kind of like a circle, like a modified circle over those seams right there. Middle finger on that seam right there. And that's pretty much how I hold my change. Every now and then I'll mess around with my pinky, like having my pinky coming further up towards my ring finger. But for the most part, that's kind of where I'm at with all those pitches. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, when it comes to analytics, what is it that really stands out with those pitches? Is it the rotation and the horizontal movement and all that?
Yeah, I would say with my sinker, it's probably the vertical movement. So there's all these numbers. I don't know how they set these benchmarks, I guess, but there's all these numbers that I would say, like, if you're at this number or below, so if we're talking vertical movement for a sinker guy, like the lower the better. So if you're at, X, and if you're below that, it's like a good or elite sinker, so I would say like that is, we're trying to get that as low as possible. And then not as concerned with the horizontal movement. I do get some, but it's not, I would say I get more sink than horizontal run. And then with the slider, we're worried about more the horizontal break. So trying to get that number, and essentially we're trying to separate those pitches as much as possible, so if the sinker is breaking arm side, and then we're trying to get the slider to look like a fastball for as long as possible, but then separate from that pitch as much as possible. So those are all numbers that were like super, foreign to me, but I mean, I think like everybody else, right? Like 5-6 years ago. But I would say most of us have a pretty good grip on it now. Whether guys, use it much, I think we all have a pretty good idea of like what we're trying to do, like what is good, and I get like what we're shooting for, in bullpens and in the game, and so it's helped in that way. I think it's really the reason why I'm still playing. I think, like I said, it was, the movement for me when I was over the top is, I guess, what was holding me back. The velocity was there, but like there were some other things that they weren't impressing, teams. And so, when we started looking more into these numbers, I guess it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because like it is on one hand sort of what was keeping me out of the big leagues with the Twins. But on the other hand, it's like the reason why I'm still pitching and have some value in this game. So right. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Now, speaking of this technology, have you ever felt that it was ever overwhelming for you? I mean, I know the Mets in particular, there was a report that the Mets hitters were a bit overwhelmed with a lot of the data. Have the pitching coaches and all that done a nice job at translating that to you guys and really filtering out what you should be focusing on?
Yeah, it's gotten to a point now where I feel like the mesh is like in a healthy place. Like I think early on there was a lot of pushback because, it was sort of running people out of the game who had been there for a long time and maybe didn't understand it as well as other people did. And so it was kind of like one of those things is like, if you don't get on board, then you just like, you have to get off, or you get pushed out. So I think there was some pushback right away. But now I think we've gotten to this point now where every coach, especially that I played for last year, and even in Minnesota, like we've gotten to the point where it's like everybody can really, really explain stuff that we may not understand, so stuff that they get and stuff that's important to them. But they're finding a way to communicate it to their guys that's going to help them implement it into their game right away, so I think that, is important. And all of the teams that are competing, in November and, winning championships are teams that have, utilized this information. Nobody's not using it anymore, but I think the best teams are the teams that are using it in a way that is really maximizing everybody's talent and abilities, both, in the player development category, and then also coaching, finding guys who are able to kind of, I guess, relate to both sides of the game. So I think it's gotten to a point now where it's like I said, I think it's really maximizing people's ability as pitchers and hitters.
And it seems like a lot of teams have also hired coaches who have experience in the game, who also are able to understand the analytics, and not just hiring people in the front office who then push it down and tell you to figure it out or use it. There's a much better form of communication because it's relatable too. I mean, if you're learning from somebody who played in the big leagues, a pitching coach like Jeremy Hefner, for example, he's somebody who you could relate to and somebody who could give you that information as well.
Yeah. I mean, and we're so lucky, like in New York with Hef, like just a really, really great man, and then somebody who pitched in the big leagues, which is important to a lot of people who are pitching in the big leagues. But he's also a genius. You know, he also knows this stuff like the back of his hand, and he's able to communicate it to his guys in a way that like I said, I can be throwing a bullpen and I can be looking at a TrackMan screen. And if you tell me a bunch of numbers and a bunch of things without helping me understand it, it's not going to do anything for me. But when you have guys like Hef, you know, that are really able to break it down in a way that somebody like me can understand, it's really helpful. So I'm super lucky to have him.
Yeah, I'd love to go through your 2021 season. It was quite the year for you with the several different teams. Started off with the Angels, right? And then you got released by them somewhat early in the year, and then went over to the Dodgers, where you then made your big league debut. Can you take us through that time period of being with the Angels and then receiving that news, and how you were able to turn things around and figure things out in AAA before you got the big league call?
Yeah, so last year was my first year of minor league free agency, and I honestly, I wasn't at the alt site or anything in 2020 with the Twins. That was my last year with them. So I had honestly kind of thought I was done. I figured if I wasn't, you know, good enough to be at the alt site with the Twins, like it was, you know, I didn't think I was going to get a job. And so started kind of like, you know, starting that process of like, what's next, you know. But pretty early on in free agency, the Angels called and some other teams called. And you know, I was super surprised, but super happy, obviously, for teams being interested. So just thought it would be a good opportunity with the Angels, and they're close to home. My wife's from Anaheim. She grew up an Angels fan. So, yeah, signed with them, went to camp with the Angels. Didn't get to pitch very much, so didn't really get an opportunity to prove myself, which I totally understand. You know, it was a new pitching coach, new manager, so they had to get their guys in there. And then from there, went to the alt site, you know, for a month. Of the minor league season got delayed, so I was at the alt site, pitched pretty well. And then went to Salt Lake, which is AAA for the Angels, and just struggled for like a month. It's a tough place to pitch, like high altitude, but I was not throwing well at all, just walking a lot of guys and struggling. But luckily, throughout the whole free agency process, awesome agency, awesome agents. They worked in like opt-outs into my contract. And so I didn't get released by the Angels. I had an opt-out on June 1st. And so it was just a messy start. It wasn't, you know, quite the opportunity. You know, I just kind of needed a fresh start, you know, I felt like. And so with that opt-out, we took it, just kind of hoping there'd be some of the teams that were wanting me in the offseason would still be there. And so the Dodgers called pretty quickly after we took that opt-out and decided to sign there. So drove from Salt Lake City to Oklahoma City, had a couple days to do that, threw a bullpen with you know, the AAA team there, and then was activated and ready to go. So, and then obviously it ended up being, you know, a great decision. I think, you know, one of the things I think that really benefited me is as soon as I got to the Dodgers, they were really intent on like using me to my strengths, you know. So I was facing like primarily righties, you know, in AAA, you know, which as a right-handed sidearm guy, like those are the guys I'm going to be most effective against. So that was cool. I think that helped me, and it was just a great environment. Like the Dodgers are the Dodgers, you know. I think it, like, people have heard a lot about it, and they're obviously right there, you know, at the end of the season each and every year. But there's a reason for that, you know. And so getting to see like what goes on behind the scenes, especially in the minor leagues, and the focus that goes into player development, and just the attention to detail, and the people that they decide to hire, and all of those things that, not saying the Angels or the Twins or anybody else I've been with didn't have that, but there's just something to like a very successful work environment, that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that people don't see, that, you know, you kind of get to see why a team like the Dodgers is there, you know, year in and year out at the end. But yeah, so was there for 5 weeks in AAA, threw really well. And then early July, got called to Miami to be on the taxi squatted for like a day. And then I think it was July 6th, made my debut with the Dodgers. So
Well, when you got that call, you're with the actual team, the actual Dodgers, but you weren't obviously on the roster. What was that phone call like when you received it, or did they call you in at the stadium?
Yeah, so I had gotten to Miami and went into Dave Roberts' office the day I got there and was just talking to him a little bit, getting to know him. And then when I was leaving the room, he was like, "Hey, I think the plan is for you to taxi squad today and then be activated tomorrow." And I had no idea about that. I was just told I was going to taxi squad. So I was like, I didn't know that, And he's like, "Well, nothing's set in stone, but we'll see what happens." So I got to the field the next day and then got called in, like right when I got there. And right then I kind of knew that it was happening. But he didn't know it was my first time. So he kind of just nonchalantly said, like, "Hey, like, we're going to activate you tonight. Be ready to go." And I was like, "Okay, I got to go make some calls." He's like, "Do what you got to do." So I start walking out and he's like, "Is this your first time?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he gets up, and hugs me and, like kind of made it a bigger deal than it was. But so it was interesting. And then the unfortunate part about that is like my family's here in California. And so I got, called up, or I got told that day at like 2 o'clock, and our game was at 7 at night. So my family, couldn't make it from San Diego to Miami in time. So they missed the debut. But I ended up starting like a bullpen day the next day. So they were able to make it out for that. But yeah, it was cool. I mean, like getting to make that, I took my phone and my headphones up into the stadium in Miami, called my wife, which was really cool. She was in Japan at the time, the other side of the world. Woke her up. It was like 3 a.m., I think, where she was, and then called my parents, my sister, and some other people, and then pretty much had to like go get ready to get warmed up and stuff. So it was kind of a quick deal, but it was really cool to finally get to make those phone calls. They've been waiting so long to make.
Yeah, that's a interesting debut. A lot of guys, their call-up story, they get a phone call, and but no, this situation was a little bit different, so it's pretty special. But then after the Dodgers, we're halfway there with the teams that you were with last year. You then they DFA you, and then you move on to the Rays, and you were there for a few days, right? It was only a few day period. Can you take me through that whole process of being picked up by the Rays and all of a sudden then moving on to the Mets following that?
Yeah, it was a weird kind of couple weeks because I don't know, man. Like I had just grinded for so long, to get to the big leagues. Got to the big leagues with like, a top 3 team, in the league, top 5 team in the league, and then started pitching well. And I was like, I started to like feel like it was a great group of guys too. Like the team in LA was awesome. I'm sure Bessie will tell you that later too, but like a really cool group of guys that welcomed, me in right away. And I was pitching well, early on, and felt like I was like contributing. And then I think like after like a Sunday game, or right after the All-Star break, I got optioned. And then a couple days after that, got DFA'd, and I was just bummed, man. Like it was like I was so happy in LA, like either in AAA or in the big leagues. Like it was just a really awesome place to be. So I was pretty upset about that. Just bummed. I get it. It's the business side of things. I'm a right-handed sinker baller throwing, 89, 90 miles an hour. So I get it. But yeah, then so I'm in Oklahoma City. I waited out there. My sister-in-law and her husband and my nephew live in Oklahoma City. So I got to be there with them for a little while I was in limbo. And then my wife played softball. She was in the Olympics last summer. So I got to watch every pitch. I didn't miss anything. So during this time in limbo between teams, it stunk obviously, but like it allowed me to like watch her play. So I was like with her, I was with my family getting to watch her play while I'm waiting to find out what happens in Oklahoma City. So on a Sunday, I go to our church there in Oklahoma City, come out of the service, and I'm like sitting in my car, and I get a call from somebody from the Dodgers saying that I had just gotten claimed by the Rays. And I was like, man, I was just like so happy, so relieved. Called my parents, and then somebody from the Rays called me and told me that I was going to meet the AAA team in Norfolk, Virginia. So the next day, packed up all my stuff, flew to Norfolk. Same thing again. Like I hadn't pitched in a week, so I threw a bullpen, had a day off, threw for the AAA team there in Norfolk, and then it was the day. It was the day of the trade deadline, and the Rays hadn't done anything yet. They hadn't made any trades. We go out and play catch. I think that like where we were, it was like the deadline was maybe like 4 o'clock or something. So it was like 3:30, and we go out to play catch. Come back in. It's well past 4 o'clock, and like nothing had happened, So I was like, all right. And then they must have made a trade like right at the deadline or something. They traded for a pitcher and then an outfielder. And then like 5 minutes after we all saw that on Twitter and stuff, me and another guy got called in and then got DFA'd. And then that time I was like, I'm just going to go home for a few days, whatever. So I flew home to San Diego. And then while I was home in San Diego, a couple days go by, and then I get a text from Hefner saying, hey, like, I think we just claimed you. And then I got a call from somebody for the Mets saying that they did. So, and then I went back to Miami, met the team in Miami with the Mets. So it was just like the craziest 2 weeks ever.
Right. Yeah, it must be a mental toll though as well, right? When you're in that situation, you're in limbo and not really sure what's going on. I mean, that could really take a toll on you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the nice thing was like it was nice to go home, for a couple days. And I think after I had gotten claimed by the Rays, I don't know. There was something in me that I was just like, well, if the Rays claimed me, if I got called up by the Dodgers, like those are two pretty good teams. I'm hoping that somebody takes a shot on me. And so I guess there was some hope after that second DFA where I was like, all right, like I think I might get claimed here. And but yeah, it was tough. I think like honestly, the toughest part of it all is like I think one of the best things about baseball is like getting to be on a team. Getting to know a group of guys over the length of a season. And so for me, it was like Salt Lake for a month, and then the Dodgers for a month and a half, 2 months, and there was the Rays for 4 days, and then it was the Mets for 2 months. So it was like it was almost like your parents when they move all the time or something, and you're at one school and you start to make friends, and then you got to go to a new school and make new friends again. So that was challenging. I think just kind of like the lack of consistent team fellowship type of thing like that. That's I think what I missed most during that whole season.
Well, now it looks like there's some stability here with New York and the Mets, and you finished the year there and currently on their 40-man roster. What can you tell me about the experience that you had finishing out the year in New York and the players that you were able to be a part of and play with?
Yeah, it was a good 2 months, man. Like, it was nice. I was up in the big leagues for a good chunk of it. I was hurt for a couple of weeks, but I was up, which was great. It was a really, really cool clubhouse, really good group of guys, like a lot of big name guys that as a rookie, you might be kind of like walking on eggshells around and kind of nervous to meet maybe. But then once you meet these guys and get to know them, it just blows you away. Like I don't know, just the kindness, I guess, the humility in a lot of these guys, like getting to meet some of I wouldn't, not necessarily heroes, but like stars of the game, to see that they're, welcoming, remembering your name, that sort of thing, was really cool. So I think it was a great clubhouse. And I think if you look at the season the Mets had, especially the last couple months, you may not have guessed that, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's New York, so everything's kind of under a microscope, as it is, but there was a lot of stuff going on. I think a lot of people are trying to fight for their jobs, and, the booing the fans and all that stuff. There was just a lot going on in a very small chunk of time. But I think throughout that, like it never got to a point where I was like, man, I don't want to be here, or this isn't the right group of guys, or whatever. That wasn't it. I enjoyed my time there. The tough thing was that, like, when I got to the Mets, it was, I think, at the very beginning of August. At that point, we were 4 or 5 games up still in the division. And by the time the season ended, I mean, we were, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 games out of it. So we had a really rough August and not much better of a September. So it was just a rough finish to the year, I think. And it didn't have anything to do, I don't think, with all the outside stuff that was going on. We were just struggling. There's going to be times, I think, in people's careers, for whatever reason, when things aren't clicking, and so, if it wasn't pitching one night, it was, offensively, and if it wasn't offensive, we were letting those guys down by our pitching or whatever. But yeah, it was just a tough kind of couple months, that's baseball. But it was a great group of guys, great coaching staff. I had an awesome time there, and just getting to be in New York, to wear a Mets uniform, getting to be around, during 9/11, for that whole deal. Like, it was a special thing. I feel very, like, lucky and blessed to be able to wear, like, a Dodger uniform and to wear a Mets uniform. Like, just a really cool thing.
After lockout ends, you'll be playing for Buck Showalter, somebody who's well respected around the game. What can you tell me about your excitement about playing for somebody like him and what you're looking to learn from him?
I'm super excited. Like, when I was with Minnesota, we had Molitor, Gardenhire was there for just 1 year. But just having somebody who's been around the game for, as long as a guy like that has, as long as Buck's been around, and all the success he's had with teams, it's really cool to me that those guys are getting back into these roles. For a couple years there, it was like, and not that this is bad at all, but, like, it was like hiring young people, hiring young men who have, not a ton of experience, I guess, in managing, and let alone managing at the big league level. But then you saw last year with the teams left in the playoffs, like, who the managers were. I thought it was awesome that Dusty was there, with the Astros, and La Russa, with the White Sox. I think people were kind of early on, they were like, whoa, like, these old school minds with these kind of new school game, like, how is this going to work? But it worked, and so I think it will be a really great combination of young talent in the clubhouse, a very exciting team with just one of the best baseball minds that we've ever seen in Buck, and just the leadership and experience that he's gonna bring to New York, I think, is going to be much appreciated, by everybody. So I'm super excited. I thought they couldn't have done a better job with their hire. And I mean, I love Louis. Rojas was a great man, awesome manager. I think it was just a tough year. I think it was just one of those things where it was like just kind of a tough situation, but I loved him, and I'm excited for what's to come with Buck. Yeah.
Well, speaking of your time with the Mets, there was also one situation that you were in that stood out to me, and that was the 12-inning game that you closed out. What can you tell me about that game and the emotions following it once it was finally over?
Yeah, we were in San Fran. It was just one of those games too where I think guy after guy is going into the game, and the game just keeps going, and you kind of just, like, keep looking down, to the left and right, and seeing the bullpen kind of thinning out. It's like, if this thing goes too much further, like, I'm going to be coming into this game. And I knew, one of the guys down there with me was down that day, and there was one guy left, Trevor Williams, who was a starter for most of the year and was kind of our long guy. And I was like, man, like, I might get into this game. And so we finish, I can't remember who threw before me, but finished the inning, and then phone rings, and it's like, Reed's in. And I was like, at that point, it was still tied, It's like, my gosh, this is crazy, and so I think we scored 4, so I went out there with a 4-run lead, runner on second base, obviously in the extra inning rule, but Posey, faced Posey the first at bat and ended up having to get at bat off him, struck him out, got a fly out. And then the game had gotten so long, the Giants ran out of position players to hit for their pitcher. So the last guy I faced I'm looking on the on deck circle, expecting like somebody to come off the bench and pinch hit. It was the relief pitcher that I had no idea if he's ever had any at bats in his life. So I was happy about seeing that in the on deck circle, so he gets up there and I think fouls a couple off and then end up striking him out with a slider. But I don't know. To me, like as a pitcher, I don't care what the score is. Like getting the last out of a baseball game is like, that's just the best feeling, So getting to do that in a big league stadium, against, the Giants and stuff. And I was still pretty new to the Mets. So that was a big win for us at that time of the season too. So it was just cool that I felt, trusted in that situation to get in there and close that game out.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I'd like to get some advice for the younger players out there. A lot of kids, they're always being coached to throw a certain way. And I feel like you're a good example of somebody who doesn't throw the orthodox way. What would you say to younger players who may feel comfortable throwing maybe from the side or different from what most people are used to?
Yeah, I was always like a low 3/4 guy. Like even when I would play infield, I would always, throw it over kind of sidearm. And that's just how I threw it. It always interests me too. Like when you see pictures of a lot of these big league pitchers, like how they look now compared to how they look when they were, 12 years old or something, it looks like very similar. So I think to me, that tells me a lot that like there is sort of this like way that our bodies work and move as far as being pitchers that is something to kind of, I think, look into, and not be afraid of and think that you have to be a robot or there's these cookie cutter mechanics out there that is going to, if you throw this way, then this is going to happen. You're going to get to the big leagues. Or if you throw this way, you're going to have Tommy John. It's just not true, So I think just figuring out what that is and being confident in what you do well. I think that to me is like the biggest thing, that like you got to start figuring that out at a pretty young age of like, I throw like this. This is what I'm good at doing. I'm going to figure those things out and I'm going to do those things a lot. I think that's one thing I've learned the last couple of years is that like this game is a lot more simple than we make it. It's not easy, but it's simple in the fact of like, know what you do well and do that a lot, so whether it's a certain pitch to a certain location, you don't have to try and do all these different things. Like if you can execute what you're proficient and what you do well consistently, then you're going to have success in this game, I think. So I guess that would be my advice, is to not be afraid or not think that you have to be, a robot or cookie cutter mechanics, that everybody throws differently, and there are obviously things that we can work at to improve, our efficiency and velocity and those sort of things, but everybody throws differently. And I think it's cool,
Awesome. It's definitely going to help out a lot of kids out there. And the last thing before we wrap up, you mentioned before your wife is also an athlete, a softball player, was in the Olympics, won a medal. What kind of experience is it to have another person in your family who's also an athlete and competing at a high level like yourself?
It's been great because I think we understand each other's lifestyles, like she understands, especially she's an outfielder. As a hitter, she understands just the failure in this game, and the emotions and everything that comes along with that. So I think to have somebody in your corner that really gets it, and not to say that, women and wives who don't play sports don't understand, but to have somebody who like really, really gets it at that level is a pretty cool thing. And then it was a joy, man. Like she's done now, but like we train together every off season, her season kind of lined up with mine. So when we're home in the fall and winter, we're lifting at the same gym, with the same trainer. And so you're just like, to get to hang out with your best friend and train with your best friend and your wife, like to get to do that is a pretty special thing. And then, obviously to kind of just to get to watch her last summer, and do her thing at the highest level, was pretty special. And the fact that it was like, I was making my debut when she was about to start playing in the Olympics. Like, it was just the coolest thing ever. Obviously, it would be great to be there, for each other. But I think we were just so prepared for, kind of what last year, brought, just because of we've done long distance and stuff for our whole careers, So it was just really cool for all it to happen, and for her to be able to go through that with me, and me to be able to go through it with her. Awesome teammates, her teammates were very supportive. My teammates were very supportive through the whole thing. So it was a special career, really impressive career for her. I'm just proud and lucky to call her my wife.
And being two competitors, it must get pretty competitive too sometimes, right? You want to watch a TV show, she's not going to like it, right?
TV show, cards, you name it, it gets competitive. So
love it, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. Best of luck this season with the Mets. Hopefully things clear up soon and get to watch some baseball again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
This is John Sterling, and you're watching Billy the Bat Boy's Corner.